All right, thank you all for joining us. We are going to get started.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Hey, everyone. This is Doug Gascon. I'm the chief of the Program and Policy Development Division here at FRA's Office of Railroad and Policy Development. This is the second office hours session regarding the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program. Today, we are going to focus on applicant and project eligibility under this program. So some tips and best practices and some clarification based on some questions we've received. I'm going to go through about a dozen or so slides, and we'll save some Q&A for the end. And again, this is being recorded if you weren't on when that came about. And yes, to preempt any questions, we will make these slides and the recording available on FRA's website in the next couple of days. Okay, so just to set the stage here, this is, again, as I mentioned, the second office hour. We will be hosting these every Thursday, or the next few Thursdays at least. Again, this is the second, just playing back from our outreach related to this NOFO. We hosted our first webinar on July 14th. That one is on our website, the full recording, the full presentation file. That goes over best practices, that goes over the NOFO, application process, environmental readiness, that sort of thing. So that full webinar is available now. And this first office hours session we did was last Thursday on the project narrative. That should be available as well. Today, again, is on project and applicant eligibility. So I'll go into more detail about all of those things. And just to flag upcoming office hours, on the 25th, we'll be talking about statements of work, very important part of the application, and frankly, sometimes the most important one in terms of, if selected, getting your grant obligated, and so you can begin that project. So we're going to do an entire session on statements of work. We'll also be doing on September 1st, the one on the National Environmental Policy Act and other environmental considerations. Again, we touched on this during the overall webinar, but we want to make sure that folks have all the information that they need to understand where their project may fit or what steps they need to take based on the stage their project is in. So we'll be diving a little deeper into the NEPA process there. And then on September 8th, which will be our last office hours, we're calling this NOFO nuts and bolts. This is all the fun stuff when you've got a lot of your application probably written, and it's really just going over the process, the mechanics of getting that application over the finish line. That includes grants.gov, SAM registration. Again, if you haven't started that by now, you should really start. That can take a few weeks, and that is out of FRA's control. So again, that was a big feature of our July 14th webinar. But again, if you haven't got that underway, I would certainly check both the NOFO for information on how to do that, as well as that the July 14th webinar, and any other sort of last minute process requirements related to submitting your application. And again, just to sort of remind everybody that, where we are, this program, the NOFO was published on July 6th. There's $573 million available. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on October 4th. That is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is a hard deadline. 5:01 is late, and your application will not be reviewed. So, we hope that through the webinars, through the technical assistance we've been given in these office hours, we can get ahead of any questions you may have. We're also available if there's a very specific question you have that we can maybe help you out with. We're also available. We'll provide our contact information at the end of this presentation. So again, applications due October 4th, and we hope that these webinars have been helpful and will continue to be helpful as you go through the process of putting your application together. So again, we're excited about this program. It is really it's a new program, and we want to provide interested applicants as much information as we can to make sure we receive a ton of very strong applications that'll make a significant improvement in grade crossing safety. It's a bit of a unique program. It is focuses only on one activity, improving grade crossings, and has a number of requirements that are a little bit different from some of our other discretionary grant programs. So hopefully one of your questions or concerns will be addressed through these various sessions. But again, we'll provide our contact information at the end, just in case there's something more specific. And just to set the agenda for this webinar, we're going to provide an overview of the project lifecycle stages, which is important. I want to make sure that folks understand, where the status of their project or the stage their project is in, and what makes sense to in terms of seeking funding. We'll talk about applicant eligibility, then project eligibility, and then we'll save some time for questions at the end. But again, I think we just want to give you an overview on eligibility here. We've gotten a lot of questions on that, so I just want to provide additional information. So before we get into eligibility, it's important to understand the different project lifecycle stages that are eligible for funding under this program. Again, this is FRA's draft project lifecycle guidance describes in detail the purpose of the different stages and deliverables expected to signify completion of each stage. FRA strongly recommends that interested applicants familiarize themselves with these project stages to sharpen their project development activities, and if seeking federal funding to apply for the appropriate stage when ready. So the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program can fund eligible grade crossing improvement projects for the project planning stage, project development, final design, and construction. So the examples of activities under each of these stages are listed here. And the expectation is that the completion of these activities and deliverables is necessary before advancing to the next stage. Again, I think what's new here that isn't really available under the other FRA grant programs is the project-specific planning. Haven't really had that before, but as you can see, it's really, really identifying the project and the transportation challenges the project would seek to solve. Beginning some conceptual engineering, potential alternatives that would need to be studied further, stakeholder engagement, really to gauge support and see who would need to be involved in the project. So that's a little bit new. We haven't had that stage as eligible under our under our existing programs. Project development is the familiar preliminary engineering and NEPA stage. Final design and construction, again, these are very standard and similar as you've seen if you've been involved or applied for CRISI grants or FSA partnership grants. Those are the standard stages that we have there, but I just wanted to highlight a little bit on the project planning just because that is a little bit new and there is a set aside in this program for planning specifically. So, it is, I think important that folks understand where their project currently is, what activities are already underway, and then what makes sense to apply for the next stage under this RCE program. So again, I think these are good guidelines in terms of where we expect applicants to situate their project when they apply and why they think why they are seeking, let's say, final design construction funding. And part of that would be sort of signifying completion of the elements under each of these stages. Again, not restricting folks to stages, but best practices are that folks advance through the project life cycle stages, sort of accordingly. A little bit of a graphic there. So again, in terms of, what we're looking for, we do have all the way from planning through construction, again, as eligible activities. Again, that would have to relate to an eligible grade crossing improvement, but these four stages of those projects are eligible for funding. So again, significant lesson learned from our years under the FAST Act and starting the bipartisan infrastructure law programs is that the strongest applications seek funding for the next appropriate stage. So we're not limiting those applications again, as I said, but keep in mind that a project that has not completed PE NEPA will not likely be competitive if also seeking FD construction funding at the same time. In a lot of cases, certainly not every, but in a lot of cases, the application won't have enough detail to support, funding in the scope schedule budget that would give us confidence to fund at that moment. We would want to see a little more of the project advance and develop as it moves forward. And we expect applicants to provide sufficient supporting information on the current life cycle stage, infant stage they're seeking. Again, those deliverables were on the previous slide. And please speak to the status of these in your application. Okay, so eligible applicants. Just to really sort of set the stage here, you'll see on the left what is the statutorily eligible applicants under this program. First one states, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, other U.S. territories, political subdivision of a state, a federally recognized Indian tribe, a unit of local government, a public port authority, or a metropolitan planning organization, or a combination of any of these eligible applicants. As is clear, the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program makes eligible a narrower list of applicants than the rest of FRA's grant programs, essentially state and local governing bodies. This is important to note that railroad operators such as Amtrak or other intercity passenger rail providers, class 2 or 3 freight railroads, commuter rail agencies are not independently eligible as applicants under this program. However, FRA expects applicants to partner with railroad operators or infrastructure owners and any other affected parties to ensure support for the project and that it advances in a timely manner. Readiness is a key factor in FRA's evaluation and selection of projects. So stronger applications will include support from any necessary project partners. Again, this program is very targeted for state and local communities to improve grade crossing safety. So if there is, if you see yourself here or you don't see yourself here, sorry, I think the best approach we recommend is that if you have a grade crossing that needs improving, to partner with your state DOT or your city or county to make sure that project can be eligible. And again, what we're looking for from all projects really is acknowledgement, involvement, partnership from both applicants and whatever necessary partners may be involved, whether that's the infrastructure owner, if not the city or county or state, whether it's the railroads that operate over that crossing, any other project partners that would need to be involved or want to be involved. We think those kinds of projects show a very strong support and tend to do better in evaluations. I think, again, this is a narrower program than the CRISI program. It's narrower than the Fed State Partnership Program. So it is really a subset of those applicants for one particular project activity, which is improving grade crossing safety. So, again, if you don't see your organization as eligible here, but you have a project that would be, I would encourage you to work with your, your state local government partner to partner on an application. And, again, under the bipartisan infrastructure law, there'll be no shortage of grant opportunities at FRA and DOT. We have the CRISI program, which the FY22 CRISI NOFO should be coming out soon, we hope. There's $1.5 billion available there. We have under the Fed State Partnership Program, that will be coming out later this fall with both a national network and an NEC focused NOFO. We have the Restoration Enhancements Program, which will be coming out. That's operating assistance for intercity passenger routes. We also have OST programs like RAISE, Infra, Mega, and Rural Bridges, and so many others modal specific. So again, there's no shortage of opportunities for your project here at the department if you happen to not see yourself here as an eligible applicant. So how do we prove eligibility? So I think one thing that we ask, and we've learned this from previous rounds of funding, is applicants are expected to address in detail the justification of how they are eligible, both how the applicant is eligible and the project is eligible. But again, in terms of applicant eligibility in the narrative, we want you to speak to that directly and provide the appropriate documentation, which could be, is the enabling legislation in your organizational structure for political subdivisions of states and units of local government. Explain how an applicant exercises independent governmental authority. Examples there being power of eminent domain, taxation, etc. The legal explanation for your applicant eligibility, and any other relevant information, for example, tax status, that could show that you do fall into the sort of limited set of eligible applicants here. So again, we want to make sure that we're giving folks the right information here, that it is incumbent upon the applicants to read the criteria, determine if they are eligible. If they are, great. If you think you are, great. Make your justification very clear and provide as much evidence as you can. If there's a bit of a gray area, I think I would encourage you to both seek potential partnerships with eligible applicants, just to make sure that your project, your worthy project, doesn't get declared ineligible based on that. So again, I think it is incumbent upon the applicants to sort of review their organizational structure, their enabling legislation, and understand where they fit, as well as provide that justification in their application narrative. Okay, in terms of project eligibility, as this program is called the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program, it's important to note that the project eligibility in statute focuses mostly on projects that eliminate crossings. As FRA likes to say, the safest crossing is no crossing. So here we have the eligibilities listed from statute here. Grade separation or closures, including through the use of a bridge, embankment, tunnel, or combination. Track relocations, if connected to closing or eliminating crossings. And the improvement of or installation of protective devices, signals, signs, or other measures that improve safety, provided that these activities are related to a separation relocation project. So again, the first three items in the statute, the first three eligibilities in statute, are related to eliminating crossings. So that's important to note. That really sets the tone of this program, the focus of the program. If you're interested in standard grade crossing improvement projects that does not close the crossing, such as installing 4-quad gates, lights, barriers, that sort of thing, then your project is seeking eligibility under item 4 here. Other means to improve the safety and mobility of people and goods and highway rail grade crossings, including technological solutions. So again, for standard grade crossing improvements that do not end up in a closure or an elimination of crossing, your eligibility is item 4 here. So again, keeping with the programs, I should also say a group of related projects can collectively that are already eligible, can be included in a single application, provided that makes sense on the applicant's part. Again, so if there's a series of crossings or something like that might need different measures, different improvements based on the design or the engineering that's currently there, that is also fine if that project does include multiple crossings. So again, keeping with the program's title and FRA's interest in funding projects that achieve the highest level of safety improvements, it's important to note that FRA will be providing a selection preference for projects that grade separate or close crossings, as well as projects that seek corridor-wide improvements to a series of contiguous or connected crossings. So again, this program was created as a narrower subset of eligible applicants and for one specific purpose, improving grade crossing safety, but primarily to eliminate those crossings. So we'll be providing a selection preference there for grade separations or track locations or corridor-wide improvements to a series of crossings. So again, if you've got 10 crossings on a stretch that are all connected and they all need improvements, that's one we would encourage you to come in as one project, if that made sense. Make a bunch of improvements that collectively will make a bigger difference in safety than sort of one-off. But again, if it makes sense for your project to come in as a standalone grade crossing, that's fine. But we just we've been getting some questions on, can you include multiple crossings in an application? The answer is absolutely yes. And again, we're really focusing on the biggest bang for our buck here, which is closing those crossings or, improving a suite or a collection of crossings under one umbrella. A little bit more on project eligibility. There is an interesting set aside here for highway rail grade crossing safety information and education programs. This is a set aside for non-infrastructure projects, that focus on outreach, education, and safety related to grade crossings. This again would be eligible under that fourth category, other means to improve the safety and mobility of people and goods at crossings. Again, the same sort of things would apply to eligible applicants, but again, you can have project partners that are not eligible applicants. That is totally fine. And I think in this case, if taking lessons learned from the Christie programs, safety program eligibility, the more folks that are involved from a diverse array of perspectives in one of these outreach or education campaigns, the stronger those projects tend to be. I just want to note too that right-of-way acquisition, rail right-of-way acquisition, is an eligible expense if related to an otherwise eligible project. We've gotten some questions on that. Again, particularly probably with grade separations or larger complex crossing improvements, it might be necessary to acquire some right-of-way. So that is eligible as an expense under this program. Improvements to existing grade separations would not be eligible. Those are, again, the purpose here is to eliminate those crossings. If they're already eliminated, that's wonderful. But an improvement to those at this point is not the focus of this program. And I also think we've got some questions on light rail. Light rail projects are generally not eligible under this program. So things to consider. There's some graphics here. Again, just sort of some reminders here about eligibility. So, again, things to consider: how does the applicant project meet the criteria? How to justify that in your narrative? Are all components of the project eligible for funding? And include every aspect of the project in your justification. Provide that supporting documentation. Citations are helpful. Hyperlinks are very helpful, especially when it's a very lengthy document, perhaps a signed NEPA document or some sort of engineering diagrams. Those can be hyperlinked, and as long as we know where to find them, that would be great. Again, we really want this justification for all aspects, both on the applicant eligibility as well as the project and all project components. Project components that are required to make the project fully operational are generally considered eligible for reimbursement under a grant agreement. For example, sort of roadway construction, relocation, or geometric alterations that are required to make a grade separation fully operational are fine. Components that are not required to complete the project, but could potentially increase operational flexibility, access, safety, resiliency, or other benefits, they should be described in detail and justification provided. Again, for such components, some additional components that might be more betterments rather than necessary for the project, FRA will determine that eligibility on a case-by-case basis. So again, it's up to the applicant to provide the justification and supporting documentation, but FRA will make those final determinations of eligibility upon review of the entire application package. Some additional considerations. This program is new, and there's some additional set-asides that are of note. I mentioned some of them, but I want to go over all of them again just to make sure everyone understands. There's a planning set-aside. So not less than 3% of the total funding can be for planning projects. And of that 3%, there's a 4.5 million would be for planning projects in rural areas or on tribal lands. So same with the rural and tribal set aside below, not less than 20% of total funding, which is 114 million, is reserved for projects located in rural areas and tribal lands. And not less than 5% of those funds, 5.7 million, are reserved for projects in counties with 20 or fewer residents per square mile. For lack of a better term, we call that super rural. And just to note, in terms of whether a project is rural or non-rural, it really comes down to where the majority of funds are being spent. If the project includes a number of crossings, and some urban and some out in rural areas, if we would make that, we would ask the applicant to sort of explain, how much of the funding will be spent in rural areas and how much in non-rural. And we'll make that determination that, the project as a whole would be categorized rural if the majority of the funds for the project are spent in rural areas. There's this, again, I want to flag the safety education program. At least 1.5 million is made available for this set aside. Again, this would be non-infrastructure related, safety and outreach, education, that sort of thing. A nice, interesting piece here that again that sort of mirrors what we have in the CRISI program. For that can be any safety program. Here would have to be focused on grade crossing and trespassing safety. Grant conditions. I know that some folks have asked about this. There's a $1 million minimum request size for projects under this program. That does not count against planning grants. Applications seeking planning funds can be below that $1 million threshold, but any other project would need to be above that $1 million minimum. Again, also is not on this slide, but there's a 20% non-federal match as part of every one of these grants. Important too, there's a state limitation. So no more than 20% of total funding, 114.6 million, can be selected for projects in a single state. So that's very important when we talk about coordinating at the state and local level. There's, what did I say, 574 million available for this program. Not more than 114 million can go to any one state. So we do know that there's some big projects, big grade separations that can be quite costly. And we know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done nationwide in terms of closing crossings and making grade separating. We haven't had the funds we've had in previous cycles. 574 is the biggest pot we ever put out so far, and these, as we move forward in the BIL programs, that those numbers will get bigger. But again, we want to make sure folks are coordinating at the state level, at the local level on that state limitation. To make sure that there's a lot of worthy projects, and folks understand that if they're coming in for a giant grade separation that's 200 million, it's automatically not going to be funded just because of that state limitation, right? So we want to make sure, again, these projects that we're seeing, if they're coming in, if they've been on a state rail plan or state grade crossing action plan, and that coordination has been done at the state and local level. Just want to make sure folks are aware of this, because we cannot award more than 114 to any one state. So just that's an important piece for folks to be aware of. And some additional considerations, again, on the project size. I want to reiterate some of these: $1 million minimum for all applications, aside from planning. The 20% non-federal match requirement is statutory. There's no getting around that. And again, that 114.6 million per state applies. In terms of applicant considerations, there's no joint application process. There will be one official applicant and one official grantee if selected. But again, that does not limit project partners. Grant applicants can partner with any number of folks, whether they're eligible or not eligible, on a project. And we want to see how the work will be laid out, and if any necessary project partners, or whether that's the infrastructure owner, the host railroad, or whoever, are aware of, involved, and support the project. That those are all things that roll into a stronger application. And again, I want to remind everyone of the selection preferences. The elimination of grade crossings via grade separations or closures, and corridor-wide improvements. These are, what we are hoping to fund here. We'll be prioritizing those projects when we're making selections. And again, I think that's, there's a lot of programs. There's a number of programs at the department that can fund grade crossing improvements. And we want to make sure that this one, in keeping with the statute, is prioritizing those that eliminate the crossings. So that's very important for FRA. And I think that's really, and sorry, I meant to say the last one is really keeping with the departmental goals. Safety, and again, applicants are strongly encouraged to submit safety justifications for a project that relies on standardized objective safety metrics and data, which could be data from sources such as gradedeck.net, the National Risk Index, safety metrics found on FRA's website, the FRA Crossing Incident Dashboard, and any other sort of relevant data. We want to make that case. We want applicants to make the case that how their project is making a significant improvement in grade crossing safety. And some of the other DOT objectives and goals, again, are the equitable economic strength, equity and various opportunity, climate change, sustainability, and transformation of our nation's transportation infrastructure. So again, we expect all applicants to speak to each of these objectives and how their project meets them. And that will be important considerations when the department gets time to awarding these projects. So with that, that is the end of our presentation. I will hold on this slide. If you want to get our contact information, again, I would get everyone on my team here. We do get a lot of incoming, so it makes sense to reach out to a couple folks to make sure that we can get back to you in a timely manner.